So sometimes when I'm out walking in the forest, I will look into the forest like this and think, okay, so what if I had to find something to eat? What if I had to find shelter? How would I do that? And I suppose there are ways of doing it, but it would be a very difficult life, having lived the way I have in this society in the United States. So you look into the woods here and you think, okay, where do I find my dinner? And then tonight, where do I find shelter? And as you can see, we're in early spring and the leaves haven't come back on. So you'd have to do that every day through all the seasons, even in the middle of the coldest nights in the winter. So when most people walk past this scene, they see it as a beautiful backdrop to their walk or something along those lines. But in fact, this is our sustenance. This is where our connection to the ecology begins. And the rules of ecology begin here. And so there's a cognitive dissonance going on in the world right now. And by that I mean there are two opposing views of the world. And one is this, the ecology in front of me right now, and all the mechanisms that keep life alive on this planet. And those are being drastically changed by human interaction with the ecology. Then on the other hand, it's so easy to ignore this. I just get in my car and I could be at a shopping mall in 10 minutes and people are busily going about their careers and their problems with their houses and their cars and their plans for their lives that involve consuming more and more stuff. And all of that is very, it's just so easy to ignore this. You just get in, you just walk away from it. However, the consumer society leans against the ecological mechanisms. Every time we buy something, that's another little bit that we take away from the ecology, which has worked somewhat until recently, and then especially over the past year, you're seeing these drastic changes occurring all over the world. So all of this is responding to the rules of ecology. You cannot just do one thing. So as we have increased the CO2 in the atmosphere, the planet is heated up. So all the birds and all the bugs and all the snakes and all the bears and fox are trying to adapt to that. And it's just so easy to get in my car and just drive away from this. And I can be at a shopping mall in 10 minutes and people are going about their lives as if none of this matters. That this is just a backdrop to our lives, something pretty that we go to every once in a while and then return to the endeavors of our jobs and our shopping and our leisure. But in fact, this is a much larger mechanism than all of that. And so how do we get people to realize that we live that we are alive because of this, and that the shopping malls and the leisure and the careers are secondary to this. I've been very interested in the word permaculture because it is a way to devise systems to work with ecology. And it doesn't mean just growing food. It means learning how humans can live within the ecology without disrupting it to the point where cataclysmic events begin to occur. So that's it. I mean, when you look at this, this is what keeps you alive. And we've forgotten, or maybe we never knew, how to live within this, rather than living on top of it, pushing it aside. And I think part of the problem is that people think, well, what can I as an individual do to stop the process that has already been put into place? And then what can I do to learn how to live with the rules of ecology? And that's a very difficult question because indeed we do rely on the stores to get our food, and we have houses and cars, and all of that stuff does keep us alive. But all of that stuff is drastically affecting the ecology. So what do we do specifically? And I think just asking that question, first of all, is really important. If you can just keep it in your mind that we do need to do something. And I find that once I ask that question, it opens up an awareness. It did for me anyway. And I begin to see that there are people all around the world who are seeing the same thing, and they are making changes. Just over the past year, there have been massive changes in energy use and renewable energy, and massive permaculture and organic gardening technologies being used by countries all over the world. And even though any one particular thing may not solve this enormous problem, it is heading in the right direction and asking the right question. Because as this begins to change more and more, at least people who are aware that it's happening will have a better chance of dealing with it. If we just get in our car, after coming out here to these beautiful places, if we just get in our car and think, okay, well, that was nice, and we forget about what's happening right now, as the changes grow, they will overwhelm us. And that closes the opportunities that could have been. So as you're going about your life, if you can just remember that these ecologies are changing, and they will affect your life drastically and soon. At least have that awareness. Then when you see things happening around the world, you see people in different groups trying to solve the problem, you can support that in some way. And some people think, well, this isn't going to happen for another 20 to 30 years. And some people think that in the next 4 years we're going to see drastic changes. And I've read the science on both. And I could make good arguments for both. But the difference between 4 years and 20 years is so small. Any young person today is going to see massive changes in the ecology around them. And older people are going to see it too, if indeed this begins to happen over the next 4 years. And as placid and as beautiful as this looks right now, those skies can whip up storms that are the size of continents. Waves can come in off the ocean that would inundate major cities. The ecology runs on a different scale of mechanism than a pretty path going through a park. Add to that all the wildlife that is going to migrate or die, and it could get pretty chaotic. So the cognitive dissonance is, do you ignore it and go back to surviving on consumer society, or do you grasp what's going on right now? Which calls into question everything we do in life in this contemporary consumer society. Everything. And that's why people ignore it, because they're like, I'm not going to question everything I do in life. I'm working towards this, and I'm doing this, and I have this planned, and all of that comes into question. But I will just leave it as long as you're asking the question, as long as you can see that this is an ecology that is changing, then that opens your awareness, which in turn connects you with other people who see it, which in turn could lead to solutions.